The following program is brought to you in part by the film Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace.
Hi, I'm Leon Charney, and we're continuing with the Leon Charney Report. We've got a scoop. We've got Professor Yair Hirschfeld with us today, who really opened up the door for the DOP, Declaration of Principle, between Israel and the PLO. Yair, welcome to the show.
Good
How
evening.
did you do it? I mean, I've been in that business 15 years ago. They called me the spy for peace. What do they call you?
I don't know. You have to ask somebody else. But I got a lot of support. I've been in...
From whom? Shimon Peres?
Shimon Peres, Yossi Beilin. The Prime Minister Rabin did the main job of the negotiations. He took all the important decisions, together with Minister of Foreign Affairs, Shimon Peres.
When the papers state, and I never believe newspapers, the papers state that basically Peres started this whole process in a secret way with Yossi Beilin. You made the connection with some Palestinians, and they set up this Norway connection. Was Rabin in on this from the beginning?
It depends when you start with the beginning. Our contacts and dialogue with the Palestinians went back to the early 80s. So, but in Oslo, I had a very close working relationship with Yossi Beilin.
But Beilin is considered the poodle by Rabin.
No, this has changed.
No more? He's grown up? He's full-fledged?
Yossi Beilin is undoubtedly one of the coming leaders of Israel, of the people of Israel.
But the question really arises, and it's a very intricate question. I was on the lawn of the White House, I'm sure you were there, when they signed this Declaration of Principle, and Rabin was a reluctant suitor, as you well know. You've seen it in all the pictures. What was Rabin's instructions to you as you were trying to negotiate or continue in the negotiation, just to keep going forward?
No, in the beginning, my task was to find out whether Palestinians meant business and wanted peace, and whether, if the government of Israel would decide to recognize the PLO, the Palestinians and the PLO was willing to come to terms with the state of Israel and to go along with an agreement which was acceptable to Rabin and Peres. And I only could do it because I was an academic, and I only could do it because my activity was fully deniable. So it was my task to speak about the mobiles and immobiles of negotiations, to see where there was a movement possible, where there wasn't, and to provide the necessary information to the decision makers. And the decision makers were mainly two. There were Prime Minister Rabin and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Shimon Peres.
So it was pretty well orchestrated between the two of them, and it was no great surprise. Peres didn't come into Rabin and say, "Here's a paper, sign it, Yitzhak."
No. We prepared the peace between the Palestinians and Israel, but we also made peace between
Peres and
Rabin. We were quite successful in that too.
Is it a lasting peace between Peres and Rabin?
I'm sure so. Yes, they are a very good team, and they are the two outstanding Israeli statesmen. They both have served the nation for 45 years, and nobody has the same experience and the same knowledge as they have. And they're
all right. Current events show a lot of hostility by Israeli settlers. 11 Israelis have been killed. A lot of flack in the newspapers. Rabin's polls have been going down precipitously. I think under 50% of the country is with him now with a poll. How do you feel about this personally?
Everybody knew that if the peace process would move into the action of implementation, there would be difficulties ahead. And it is obvious that the extremists want to undermine the peace process, and that is what they're trying to do, but I can tell you they will not succeed. I can tell you there's a lot of political determination on behalf of the government of Israel, on behalf of the Palestinian leadership, on behalf of the Jordanian leadership, and on behalf of the United States government to make this succeed. And the people of Israel want peace, so it will succeed.
So you have no doubts that the process will continue and it won't be scuttled by the events that we read about in the last few days?
I do not want to create any situation of euphoria. I believe that euphoria is something very dangerous, and expectations should not be unrealistic. And realistic expectation says that there are many difficulties ahead, there are obstacles ahead, and there are three different kinds. One kind is that the extremists will try to undermine the process, and they're doing that, and we will face the challenge, and the challenge will be faced successfully. The second difficulty is that there's still a gap between Israel and the Palestinians, and we have to bridge the gap, and that won't be easy either. And the third difficulty is that it is necessary to create all the new institutions for a new kind of cooperation and coexistence, and there are also difficulties ahead of us, but we have to face the difficulties, to be aware of them and act accordingly.
I think one of the problems you have is that people compare this to Camp David, and it's not a good comparison. Egypt was a government, it had its institutions, it had its central bankers, it had all these infrastructure of a governmental authority in place. The Palestinians are basically an organization. They're trying to bring these types of peoples together. And I think the expectations of people I don't think there should be a comparison. I was involved with Camp David. People ask me if there's any comparison. I don't see any comparison. This is a totally different operation. And I know that I know a lot of Palestinians who live in London who could be very, very helpful, very wealthy Palestinians. And the interesting thing about that is that you ask Jewish people to help Jewish brethren all over the world, instantaneously they come. There's a moderation amongst Arabs which intrigues me, really. I've called some Arab people that I know, and I've been up at Harvard with a lot of them, and there's a hesitancy. Sometimes I don't understand it. Maybe you do. Is they're protecting a flank, or they're ensuring their position?
I think there is full Palestinian support. I believe that many Palestinian businessmen and many people with means are supporting the endeavor, and this is an organizational process. What you said rightly is that the Palestinians don't have yet the institutions for self-government, and they have to establish these institutions, and then the process of doing it, and there is a strong desire of Palestinians to take a part in these activities, and they're doing it. So, but Rome wasn't built on one day.
Two. Professor, we got to close, but I'm going to ask you two questions. Will there be a Palestinian state, A, and B, if there is a Palestinian state, do you as an Israeli citizen have any problem with it?
Palestinians are moving towards the establishment of Palestinian self-government institutions. Now, if the process goes on, there will be negotiations on Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank and Gaza, at final status negotiations in several years to come. And then, if peace is established, if the Palestinians will create, with us together, an environment of security and economic development, then we will move forwards towards the establishment of a national entity, yes.
So you see it as a possibility, and you don't see it as a problem, since by the time they get to it, there'll be a lot of harmony between Israel and the Palestinians.
We will have built the foundations for a stable and secure peace, yes.
Great. Thanks for coming on. Professor Yair Hirschfeld, one of the secret, not negotiators, but someone who opened up the contact with the Palestinians, PLO, and he's got his place in history.
The real kickoff for my work was the work you did, was Camp David. Because Camp David was an enormous challenge, and we understood that the Palestinian part was very central. And I started with Prime Minister Bundeskanzler Kreisky to work on something that could actually carry out the self-government concept from a bottom-up approach, developing economic self-empowerment of the Palestinians. And I took this to Yossi Beilin, I took this to to Shimon Peres. And this became the start of it. It's also why it's called Economic Cooperation Foundation. We've been involved in all track 2 activities. The Oslo Agreement has paved the way to a potential two-state solution. The Oslo Agreement has achieved something which is today of enormous importance. Israel's security is not based only on Israel's own weapons and own inkidonim and its own bayonets. But Israel's security is based on security cooperation with Egypt, security cooperation with Jordan, security cooperation with the Palestinian Authority, and security cooperation which we do not speak of. This is an outcome of Oslo. And if you really want to take care of the security of the State of Israel in the coming 10, 3, 5, 6 decades, you have to work on it. And in many ways it's been a game changer. If there's been failures in Oslo, there's been many failures. The biggest failure, if you ask me, the biggest failure was a public relations failure. We on the public relations front, Oslo has failed by 100%, because the right wing against it, the left wing attack it, everybody attacks it. In substance, it has made it clear that there is no Eretz Yisrael Shlema. It has broken the dreams of some of our very radical right-wing people, but it has to pave the way for an outcome that we still have to work on.
We believe in talking, even with the bad guys. And even among the bad guys, you find people that you can talk to. We had a very, very interesting exchange with Khaled Mashal, the leader of Hamas, who in 2006 tried to, when he was at the peak of his popularity or power, now he's no longer as powerful as he was at the time. But then he was quite powerful in the movement. It was not long after we tried to kill him, so there was the aura of having survived an Israeli assassination attempt, and we made him a hero by killing him and bringing him back to life. And at that time, nobody in Israel was willing to give it a chance. So, but who knows? Who knows what the beating that they took now? They took a very, very serious beating. You know, Israelis are not satisfied because we didn't occupy the whole Gaza. I think on this one, Bibi and Bogi alone were right to do it in a very...
We didn't crush.
We didn't crush them, yeah, that's the slogan. But crushing them has a price, and I'm not sure the world will let us crush them. See what happened. One school and the whole world goes crazy. And rightfully so, okay? I'm not criticizing them. The sixth school. Okay, how many schools will you have if you conquer Gaza? Okay? It's not doable. But they took a beating. They took a very serious beating. Their hopes were shattered because they were intoxicated. They thought that they are going to impress us with their capabilities and so on. Didn't happen. So who knows? Remember when the PLO was a gang of terrorists?
Instead, we speak to everybody. And because we speak to everybody, we can identify common ground, the zone of common ground. And we clearly understand that there is a zone of common ground with Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the PA, us, and see how you handle with the Hamas. And so in this case, it sounds arrogant, but we have a better understanding than some of our American friends.
The strategic concept is not to strengthen Hamas for the future, but to bring the Palestinian Authority back to Gaza. Now, the Egyptians were the first to understand that this war was an opportunity to bring the PA, the Palestinian Authority, and Abu Mazen back to Gaza. They understood that we are going to cause enough damage to Hamas that they will be desperate for some international financing and rehabilitation and development.
All the money will go to the Palestinian Authority?
Sorry? Through.
Through the Palestinian Authority.
I mean, through them.
Yeah, they will be the coordinator.
The coordinator.
Okay.
But they will work very closely with the various international organizations who can carry out a lot of things on the ground.
I don't think that the donors will not trust them with getting the money and using it. The donors will let them supervise, coordinate. Right?
Yeah, no, we're speaking about getting kind of, how do you call these big agencies in La Lot, these big accountancy firms.
Big five,
Big four.
big four now.
Yeah.
The book for, what is it, Price Water?
The accounting
Yes,
firm
yeah.
to oversee the...
Yes, part of it will be done by them.
There will be oversight. I mean, nobody trusts the Palestinian Authority with billions of donor money. They don't have such a great track record.
I'm talking about the Palestinian in Gaza. I think that they already lost most of their fame, if you want, in Gaza. The fact that they had to withdraw from Gaza show you they understand that if they will not withdraw voluntarily, the people will push them from the government. So I think that in Gaza they lost the war, or they lost the fight, not because of Israel, because they cannot gather the population. In the West Bank it's a little bit more complicated because people still don't have the experience with Hamas government. But even in the West Bank, people understand what they see in Gaza and in Egypt. The situation of the environment, meaning what happened in Egypt, what happened in Syria, what happened in other places, are not for Hamas, not for the Muslim alone.
Last event started with the killing and kidnapping of the three young yeshiva students from Gush Etzion. And at that time I spoke to the Palestinian, as Nimrod said, I have a very good relationship with people in the West Bank, influenced people. And they saw it as a strategic damage to the Fatah, because if you remember, it was after the Shati agreement between the Hamas, of course you remember, the Hamas and the Fatah. And a few weeks later they kidnapped these guys, and for the Fatah leaders in the West Bank it was a strategic pain and event even to them. So they are not sympathetic with the Hamas even in the West Bank. About Gaza, I agree, of course, with Boaz. At that time, when I spoke to them now, in the middle of the negotiation in Cairo, outside they say they have to support their brothers in Gaza. But inside the Fatah, you can find a lot of unsympathy to the Hamas.
I wonder, those recent events, the military operation in Gaza, how does it influence the chances for to renew the negotiation between us and the Palestinian government? Does it mean that we have more chances to renew the negotiation and to come to some kind of an agreement because now Abu Mazen is rehabilitated by the Israeli government? Or does it mean that the fact that they are involved in the settlement with the Hamas will harden their position, and it will make it less possible to reach an agreement? And since I see Nimrod sitting there and smiling, I wonder what will be your answer to this?
My answer would be that the conditions for renewed negotiations and for their potential success are better. But that doesn't mean that your government and mine is prepared to do what it takes. I'll just use one example, okay? in order to avoid, Fufi mentioned the Shati Agreement, 23 of April, the Hamas-Fatah Reconciliation Agreement and Unity Government. In order to justify breaking negotiations with Abu Mazen, we attacked that government, and the mantra was, Abu Mazen chose terror over peace. Last week, 10 days ago, we changed the mantra. This government of unity is an opportunity for bringing the Palestinian Authority back to Gaza, reducing Hamas relevance. What an opportunity. The morning this is over, there will be a question. Do you continue with this line that now Abu Mazen is representing all Palestinians, not just half? Or will you remember suddenly that he married terrorists? It's talking points, it's excuses. The facts are that it's the same Abu Mazen that is prepared to make peace, that is now is going to be emboldened and strengthened, because he will not only represent all Palestinians, but will also be in charge of a multi-billion-dollar Gaza rehabilitation plan, which will give him a lot of popularity in Gaza. Finally, the fact that what we used to talk about around this table, and was our secret, that there is a regional coalition that will emerge if we go for peace. Bibi is talking about it now. Yvette Lieberman is talking about the regional thing. Everybody is talking about the regional thing. The only difference is they like people who come to a restaurant and choose the dishes that they like, but don't like to look at the price tag. It's not for free. A regional coalition with the Saudis and the UAE and Egypt, Jordan, and the Palestinians and others requires progress on the peace process. Netanyahu wants the dish, and the question is, will he be willing to pay the price? So the answer to your question, as always, it's a question of leadership. Qatar is a fascinating player. They live next to what is relatively the giant, Saudi Arabia, trying to survive and compete. Saudi Arabia has Al Arabiya, Qatar has Al Jazeera. Qatar is trying to survive by doing two things. One is talk to everybody. They maintain relations with the Iranians, as well as with the Americans, American base, major American base in their territory. Talk to us, talk to everybody. And the other thing is spread their money in the service of part of their regional competition is caused this conflict of interest between them, us, between the Saudis, Egyptians, and us on the one hand, and them on the other. And that is the kind of Islam that they promote. They are the patrons of Muslim Brothers. And Hamas is an offshoot of the Muslim Brothers. So for them it's a natural thing. And they believe that if they will be involved in Gaza development, in funding Hamas and so on, it will give them a stand vis-a-vis the competitors. They are a very serious problem for us in that respect. And we find ourselves in the same basket as Saudi Arabia and Egypt. The basket that believes that the Muslim Brotherhood is not Al-Qaeda, is not Daesh, is not the jihadi global revolutionary Islam, but it is a form of a very aggressive national Islam that we saw its effect on Egypt when President Morsi was there, and we see its effect on Gaza via the Hamas. It's a violent strategy in the service of a very determined Muslim ideology. Most Palestinians are not violent, not extremely religious. They're religious, they are believers, but moderate. They took over Gaza and they don't let go. Maybe now we will see a change in that.
Depends in Jordan, like in any country who you ask. First you have the regime and the regime supporters, the Bedouins of Jordan, that of course really afraid from Muslim Brotherhood, their own Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan, and in the recent years when the Muslim Brotherhood gained power in Egypt, it was a sign of threat for the Jordanian regime, because the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan raised their expectations and raised their profile, and they thought that this is the future for Jordan also. But after what happened with Sisi counter-revolution, this situation was calmed down, and the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan now are in a very, very weak stage. They still have supporters within the Jordanian public. It's not. It's a movement with deep roots in every country, I think, in the Arab world. So they still have supporters, but I would say that they are now knowing better their limitations. So they are not trying to, they are not trying to compete the regime, and they know their limitations. They chose just a few months ago a very moderate leadership, and so I think that they are controlled. Jordan is very different from other countries in the Middle East, because Jordan knew how to co-opt the Muslim Brotherhood inside, and Hamas, as part of the Muslim Brotherhood, is the Palestinian section of Muslim Brotherhood. They have very good contact with the Jordanian section of Muslim Brotherhood. They have also in Jordan some of the Palestinian origin people that support Hamas and support Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan. But they do understand, as I said before, the limitations, and a part of that you have to understand that there is a sympathy for the Palestinian cause, or for the Palestinian suffering in Gaza. So you see demonstration in Jordan, because this is how they show their support to their own people, and this is a fact that we cannot ignore in any way.
Listen, it's very simple, and it's very tragic. It's very simple because I don't believe in the notion of a one-state solution. There are people who gave up on the two-state solution and believe that this is the last chance, and if this doesn't work, we're going to end up in one state. Now, it's not just that I don't like the idea of one-state solution, because I want Israel to be a Jewish and democratic state, but I don't believe that this will ever happen, because I don't think that these two people will be able to live in peace.
Which two people?
Palestinians and Israelis will be able to live in peace in one country. I think that if we don't separate by wisdom, we will separate by blood. We will shed each other blood enough until the next round of violence will be more expensive to us, to our sentiment, than the pain of separation. So I think the challenge for everybody who is interested in peace is to avoid that from happening, to get to the two-state solution before the inevitable bloodbath that will bring it about anyway. Let's be smart, let's do it before. I think the contours of an agreement are quite clear. There's argument on this and there's argument on that, but once you have leadership that wants to do it, we know what it's going to look like. Most 80% of the settlers will stay where they are and become part of Israel. and Israel will compensate for that territory somewhere else. The concept is known. Jerusalem will be a shared capital for two states. There will be no flooding of Israel with refugees, period. The security, the Palestinians have accepted that Palestine will be a demilitarized state, which will include Gaza as a demilitarized area of Palestine. They accepted that. I mean, there's enough to negotiate, and the negotiations will be tough. But the basic concept is already known since the days that President Clinton announced his parameters in 2000. What is required primarily is leadership that believes in this and has the internal integrity and strength to bring it about.
I don't think that the world is uprising. I don't think that the Israeli Arab will uprise. Honestly, I am very close to the Israeli Arab population. More than this, I have relatives in this community. And speaking to this community, speaking to these people, speaking to my family, I know for sure that they will not reach an uprise. But I think the question is not to them, the question is to our government, to our Jewish community, to the people as surrounding them. If you consider them as part of the Israeli community, you have to change your attitude towards them, economically, socio-economically, politically. Do something that they will feel part of the Israeli society. And when I say I'm close to them, many of them served in the army, served in the Israeli, all kind of echelons, security echelons. And the question is what we are doing to support them and to give them the feeling that they belong to this society. If you are asking if they want to be part of the Palestinian next state, no, they want still to be here. They live here, they grow up here, they speak our language. We eat their food. We are very close. I live in Rosh Hashanah. Near to me is Kfar Qasem. We are in an excellent relationship. We know how to do it. We know how to respect each other. So the question is to our government, not to them. Thank you.
Peace means taking into account the dignity of other people and the fact that there are other people who have certain rights. Peace in the Middle East basically will come when the clergy in the mosque on Friday preach it and when the rabbis in the synagogue on Saturday preach it. During the time of Camp David I, you had political leadership that was able to contain that type of religious fervor. What the country needs is some prescient understanding of what is going to happen in the future.
Tune in when the Leon Charney Report begins a special series on the Israeli-Palestinian question.
Hi, this is Leon Charney for the Leon Charney Report, sitting with the most honorable fourth president of the State of Israel, the Honorable Ephriam Katzir, well-known, renowned, world-renowned scientist and a president of Israel at a very important time, a time that I shared with him. Mr. President, first of all, it's tough for me to call you Mr. President, so I may switch to Ephraim, and with no dishonor to your office.
You are most welcome to do it. My students do it anyhow, regularly.
I should be lucky enough to be your student, and then I would probably be much more informed in life, and especially science. Ephraim, I work with Jimmy Carter on Camp David. All the films that we see show you greeting President Carter and being the president of the State of Israel when Camp David was signed. Was that one of the momentous occasions in your life?
As a matter of fact, when I entered my office as the fourth president of the State of Israel. This was in 1973, and within a month the Yom Kippur War started. It was a most difficult time. So I started serving my people at a very, very difficult time. And I was extremely glad that towards the end of my term in 1978, President Sadat came to Jerusalem. I received him at the airport. He was officially my guest. And really the process started, which led afterwards to the peace treaty. And President Carter was of really remarkable help in promoting this type of activity. So I was extremely glad to finish my activities as President of the State of Israel at such a wonderful time. And I always remember my meetings with President Carter really as the most enjoyable, happy occasion.
What were your emotions when you saw President Sadat come off the plane and you as President of the State of Israel greeting one of the most formidable enemies? It must have been heart-wrenching.
It was really, I really didn't know how to behave, frankly. Should I come and embrace him? Should I stand far away while he was surrounded with all his security people? But it was my function to introduce him to our dignitaries, to our Prime Minister, to the people standing around. So I tried to say a few words about every one of them, every minister, the Prime Minister. And he was very nice afterwards when we drove together towards Jerusalem from the Ben Gurion airport. He made extremely nice comments. He said how much he wanted to meet Golda, how happy he was to meet Begin, and the various ministers. Arik Sharon was at that time the Minister of Agriculture. He didn't stop talking about him. He recalled all the various activities that he was involved during the last war, and he knew that Arik Sharon was on the other side trying to cross the Suez Canal and succeeding to do it. So I must say that whereas for the first couple of minutes really I didn't know how to behave, but really within half an hour or 40 minutes I found here is a great leader. You felt it, and one can talk to him, and we became, after another 2 days, really great friends.
Did you have contact with him after the signing?
Yes, sure. After the signing, no. After the signing, no. But when the treaty was signed, I was, of course, fully informed. And I must say that Mr. Begin, as Prime Minister, he had great respect for the position of President. We had a mutual understanding. He would report to me not only after things happened, but whenever he had a plan to carry out, he would come to the President to discuss the problems with the President. Before going to Camp David, he brought with him military people, maps that he showed me his ideas. And of course, I knew very well Barak, who at that time, who became afterwards one of our best judges, a member of the Supreme Court, who was with him at Camp David. Ezer, of course, was with him. And so I was well informed by Mr. Begin and by my friends who were accompanying him. And it was really remarkable.
A lot of people in the United States don't understand how the presidency of Israel operates. Technically, you are the most senior official of the Israeli people. Is that correct or incorrect?
According to Constitution, we don't have a Constitution, but we have a special law concerning the president, which has been passed by the Knesset, by our parliament. And the president is supposed to represent the people of the country. So the State of Israel is at least legally not represented by the prime minister, but by the president. The president in many ways has many official kind of functions which are not executive functions, so his impact on everyday life is not very great. And I would compare him with the status of the Queen of England. He is highly respected. People will come to him to tell about their dreams, about their activities, achievements, and failures. People will see in the house of the president the place where every important event that has occurred during the time of the presidency should be reflected in the house of the president. As a matter of fact, Leon, sometimes it led to absurd. They felt, people in the country, that if the president said, "You have done something good," this means that his action will be recorded in the diary of the Jewish history of the State of Israel, or of the citizens of the State of Israel. And writers would send me their books. If I wouldn't respond within a week, they would call me every day. "What do you think about the book? What do you think about the book?" And I had to read and to give my opinion. But it stemmed from this feeling that really the best that the country can offer, this is reflected in the house of the president. And it's really an outstanding position, I feel, where you really share with the people not only an understanding of their achievement, but of their dreams. Their dreams they'll discuss with the president, not with the ministers. They are busy, not with the prime minister. He's terribly busy. But what do they want to do? So in this respect, it's really a remarkable position. But the president has a couple of official duties. After elections, he has to appoint the newly elected member of the parliament whom he wants to form a government. He will come back if he succeeds to form a government. He'll report to the president. He'll then present the government to the Knesset, to the parliament. If he gets a vote of confidence, we have a government. If not, the president is allowed to ask any other member of the Knesset. I became an expert in the field because during my term between 73 to 78, of course, I had Golda Meir, who was the prime minister, and she was a wonderful woman. As a matter of fact, I admired her. I knew her as a child, and we were very great friends. She was for me a kind of a mother image. And I had to listen to what she said. But she resigned. I nominated her again. Then she resigned. And then I nominated Rabin. But then after elections, I nominated Begin. So I became really an expert in this part of the activities.
I get a feeling from you that when you were president, although you had this wonderful job, you really missed your science. Is that correct?
Yes, I missed it, it's true. And science is a creative kind of activity. A president, he encourages people, he's involved in the life of the country. But his impact on everyday life, on politics, on economics, on security, on defense, is really marginal. He can discuss that the prime minister has to report every second week or every week, or one of his ministers to the president. They will discuss openly what's going on. They'll listen to the president. But it's an indirect impact. So in this respect, I missed science, no doubt. I could read, but I couldn't work in the laboratory. But, you know, I recall when Golda Meir tried to persuade me to become president. I was at that time at a meeting, scientific meeting in Boston. She used to call me every night. And night for her was evening there. So when she called me again, she didn't allow me to sleep. So I told her, look, I have no choice if I want to survive. I accept your offer. But I must say that then I talked to Sapir. Sapir called me still in the United States. And I told,
Finance minister.
yes, who was a great friend and a man with a wonderful, really Jewish heart. He calls me and he says, look, I know you'll miss your science. I'll build you a little institute there in the cellar. Don't worry. So I thought to myself, to build a Weizmann Institute in the cellar of the house of the president, it will be a very serious effort. So I missed it. I could read, but I couldn't work in the lab.
Ephraim, world events in the last 2 weeks have put Israel, unfortunately, on the map again in terms of the press and United Nations, etc. And you've been through this since 1948 and seen a lot of response with respect to this. What do you feel is really going on now? What's happening?
Of course, I'm very, very sad about what has happened. It's obvious. And I would say I grieve with every family who has lost its beloved, whether a son or a father or a child. It's obvious that we want to have the possibility to pray at Temple Mountain without any disturbances. We don't want Palestinian Arabs to throw stones at anybody, and certainly at people who are praying. But I was very sad that the police force, the forces, military forces who were there, took the step that they took, and without knowing really the details, it's now under investigation, where they threatened as far as their life goes, that they have no choice. But it was certainly a very sad occasion, there is no doubt. But what is perhaps most unpleasant and serious, that as a result of all these activities, hatred between Palestinian Arabs and Jews in Jerusalem is being built up, whereas the hope of the mayor of Jerusalem, of Teddy Kollek, was that it will be a united city, not only that people will be able to move from one place to another, but people will cooperate, will help one another in trade, in education. Unfortunately, all such events don't help to build this up. I hope that finally the Palestinian Arabs will be able to build up a leadership which is more advanced and more liberal and more moderate, and they will understand you cannot wipe out Israel. I think, in my personal opinion, Palestinian Arabs in the West Bank and in Gaza, they are entitled for an autonomy. They should build up their own life, their economic life, their own education, their own cultural life. They should not threaten us. They should not threaten the existence of the State of Israel, but they are entitled to have independence. But I feel that time is ripe that the Arab leaders and the Arab countries around will understand our problems. Sadat, when he was in my home, he told me many times, what do you need as far as security goes? And I told him, and he accepted it. I told him, look, the Jewish people have gone through unbelievable traumas. The Holocaust, which happened during these last, 50 years. You should understand the sensitivity for security. They want to live in Israel as a secure place. They'll do anything to ascertain their security. He accepted it. He asked me many times, what should you do in order to be safe and secure as far as defense goes? And the Palestinian Arabs have to understand it. And then I come to what practically all presidents of the United States said. And I accepted it. This I discussed with President Ford when I was his guest. He told me, and I accepted it, that in order to have a fruitful discussion with the USSR, you must be strong. If you are weak, people will exploit you, but not come to negotiate with you in a kind of a sensible, intelligent way. This is why we had to build up our strength, our economic strength, our social strength, our agriculture, and our defense. I was involved in building up, in helping to build up research in defense. And I used to tell my friends, look, as a scientist, for me, biophysics is the most important thing. It's unbelievable satisfaction. But somehow, with years, I realized that if you want to carry out research in biophysics, better stay alive. If you are not alive, it's very difficult to carry out research in biophysics. This is why I spent many years to help to build up defense in Israel. I was the chief scientist of the Ministry of Defense during the 6 Days War. And I don't regret it. It helps us now to carry out biophysics and biochemistry. So I hope that the Palestinian Arabs, and I hope also the neighboring Arab countries, will understand that the times for really kind of modern wars, I feel it has passed. Let's negotiate, and because of this, and talk in a sensible way. We should have our leaders also to talk sense whenever one has to.
And we had the honor of having Ephriam Katzir, the 4th president of the State of Israel, a renowned scientist and one of the most honorable men that I have met in my lifetime. I thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.